What's going on, guys? You know the deal by now. Same intro as always. It's fast cars, fast money. Just me talking about the Cup Series at Martinsville. I've actually been talking about all the series at Martinsville this weekend. So our truck video is up, our Xfinity video is up. Both of those series race on Saturday, and then the Cup Series is racing on Sunday. But just wanted to say a quick thank you to everybody. We're almost done. I mean, NASCAR DFS season is quickly coming to a close. Next week is the championship race in Phoenix. Then we have the super long off season until February, and then we'll be back at it again next year. So we'll be back next year. We've got to do a little bit of tweaking in the off season. We want to be offering some more things, just improving the channel. Just that so we can grow really. But we've had tremendous growth this year, so thank you to everybody. Dropping a like really helps with the YouTube algorithm. It means a lot. It's a good way to show your support to the channel. And then also, if you've been watching our videos all year long, if you're a consistent watcher and if you haven't subscribed yet, hitting this subscription button means a lot too. And if you're new here, if you're just finding us out now, this is what we do. And we just kind of break down NASCAR DFS slates, tell you about our thoughts, tell you about who we think is going to be good, who our interest levels are around. And we just try to have fun with it. But like I was saying, Martinsville is one of my favorite races of the year from a fan perspective. Not a huge fan of the playoff format. I don't know how legitimate it is, but from a fan standpoint, it does add a lot of excitement. It does add a lot of drama. It does get me very excited for the race this weekend. Now, from a DFS standpoint, this is it's either super rewarding or it's extremely frustrating, especially the Cup race. Like the Cup race is really the one that stings the most. There's 500 laps for this race, and every lap that gets clicked off, there's points awarded to whoever is in first place and whoever is running the fast lap. But it's really just whoever is out in front. They're going to be racking up a significant amount of points. And if you don't have them in your line, regardless of, I played a guy who got, +5 place differential points. Well, if another guy who, was cheaper than that runs and, scores 70 plus dominator points, you're screwed. So like I said, it's really satisfying or really frustrating at the same time. So this is definitely a weekend I'm going to be building multiple lines. It's hard to just have a clear understanding of who those potential dominators are going to be. But there's definitely some guys who we feel more confident in than others that, we're going to probably try to be over the field on, and then others we still want exposure to, but maybe we're going to come in a little bit under the field. So let's just go over real quickly race preview and initial thoughts. Like I was already saying, it's a 500 lap race, a lot of points up for grabs. It's a weekend you really want to focus more on dominators than you do on place differential. So just keep that in mind. This is the final cutoff race of the third round of the playoffs. So after this weekend, we're going to know for sure who the drivers are who are going to be competing for that title, the championship title, next week at Phoenix. The only driver who knows for sure out of all three series is going to be there is Kyle Larson. Everybody else is trying to race their way in. If you win the race and you're a playoff driver, it automatically guarantees you a championship spot. And if Larson wins or if a non-playoff driver wins, then it just comes down to, okay, who has earned the most points throughout these three rounds? Those other three drivers are going to be locked in. And it's a pretty close points race in the Cup series. It's really only Joey Logano who's kind of the outlier, who's kind of in a must-win situation. Everyone else, for the most part, has an equal opportunity to race their way in on points. If you're looking at data, you want to look at the 750 horsepower package. It's a low, flat half-mile track. They're running the big engine, low downforce, high horsepower, the better package of the two. Like I said, dominators are more important. Like I was saying, there's so many potential guys who can lead. It's a kind of a difficult week to nail. Like it's not as straightforward as oh, Kyle Larson's going to lead at a mile and a half. Oh, William Byron's going to be fast at a mile and a half. We knew that. You knew that. This week there's still, there's still some plays that it's pointing towards, but there's a lot of unpredictability. Might get very chaotic too at the end of the race. We saw Kevin Harvick literally dump Kyle Busch at the end of last year to try to advance himself. It didn't end up working, but that's what NASCAR wants. I talked about it in the Xfinity video, so I'm not going to repeat myself, but this race is going to be chaotic. That's what they want. Like I said, it should be really fun from a fan standpoint. So just kind of sit back, relax, have fun. And, hey, hopefully you come out of it in the green on the end. But so let's talk about the drivers. With all that I just talked about in mind, you want to target probably 3 or 4 dominators in your line. I highly doubt it's just going to be a single dominator lineup that is optimal. A two dominator lineup is possible. But if that's the approach you're going, you have to nail those dominators. Like if you're playing in like some of the place differential plays, for example, I guess there's not really too many straightforward place differential plays who are expensive, but like if you're plugging in a guy who hasn't led all season and most likely isn't going to lead in the race versus a guy who's priced right next to him who does have that potential to lead, and that guy does end up leading, like you're just missing out on all those points. Like I said, this is the week you really want to focus on those dominators. So Kyle Larson, I think, is an extremely interesting play. It's like, what do you do with him, right? He's the most expensive. He's literally won the last 3 races in a row. He's hands down the best driver this year. It's not even close. But most of his wins have been coming in that 550 horsepower package or, these road courses. The short flat tracks, we haven't seen Larson dominate the same way that we've seen, Truex and Hamlin, the JGR cars out front dominating. People look at Larson did in his Chip Ganassi 42 car. Well, you could say that at any track. Like, of course, Larson's going to run better in the Hendrick Motorsports car. Like, of course, look at what he was accomplishing in that 42 car. Like, it's hard to go off of past data on Larson to try to predict what he's going to do. But I either think you go completely over the field on Larson or you just completely fade him altogether. I think Larson's going to come in under owned than he should this weekend, just because statistically all the stats say play the JGR cars, play the Penske cars. Those are the guys who run well in this package. And that's probably the way that I'm going to go if I'm just building one line. So if you're building multiple lines, I think you should have them. But if you're looking for, potentially a lower owned guy, you could potentially get the guy who's been the most dominant driver all year long at a significantly lower ownership than he should be. But then again, ownership has been really weird this weekend or really weird this year. So I don't know. Larson's just that guy that you're like, what do you do with him? Because if you play him, he's really expensive. So you're probably sacrificing some other drivers, some other potential lap leaders. Truex and Hamlin are probably my 2 favorite drivers to lead. I think starting with either of them or potentially both of them, if you're just building one line, those are the 2 drivers I'm the most confident in. I don't love William Byron just because I don't think he's the same dominator upside that literally any of the other drivers around him have. But if you nail the dominators and Byron finishes 3rd, he'll be a good place differential play and he'll work out for you. But like I said, you got to really nail those dominators. Kyle Busch, he's had the speed. He just hasn't had the finishes. So I'm probably not going to have too much of him. But again, this is a week, if you're building multiple lines, you want exposure to all of these potential lap leaders. And he is definitely one of them. Chase Elliott. Elliott's interesting. Like if you're looking at the playoff cut line, like him and Hamlin are in a pretty good situation points wise where like they could theoretically like play it safe where they have, enough points to advance to the championship round, but nothing's guaranteed. You don't want to see Elliott do anything stupid. Like he was getting into the wall at the very end of the race last week at Kansas, almost potentially cutting a tire down and making himself in a potential, terrible spot for Martinsville. Luckily that didn't happen for him. But you have to imagine, like, you have to think about the big picture. So next week is really the week that matters. You just have to get there. So that's my only potential fear with Elliott, but he's way too cheap. So he's a really easy to pair with those other drivers. Love Ryan Blaney. I think Blaney's going to get a lot of ownership, which concerns me a little bit. But again, we just want drivers who can lead laps. And I feel like Blaney, of the three Penske cars are there, probably rank them in that order of Blaney, Logano, and Keselowski. All of them are basically priced the same. They all start relatively, right next to each other. And they're all really easy to pair with, a Larson, with a Truex, with a Hamlin, with a Chase Elliott. Like you can get 2 to 3 or 2, potentially even 3 Penske cars in the same line together with another, 11K, 10K driver, just depending on how low on the slate you want to go. So literally from Keselowski all the way up to Larson, I'd have exposures to all of them except for maybe William Byron. I don't see Byron being a potential dominator, but all those other ones, like I think if you can get 2, 3, most likely 3 or 4 of those guys in a line, that's where I think you should start, and then focus on the value plays, focus on the place differential plays that you can afford from there. So let's talk about some of those guys. Christopher Bell, very difficult to get to. This 8K range is very difficult to get to unless you're taking the 2 dominator standpoint. But if you go that route, like you have to nail it. And I don't have a crystal ball. Like I can't tell you who the potential dominators are going to be. So I want more of them in my line than less of them. So 8K range is going to be tough, but Christopher Bell has really good stats in this 750 horsepower package, especially at these low mile or less than 1 mile tracks. So if you can somehow get Bell, I think it's great, but I don't go out of your way to get him because I don't feel as confident as him leading laps where you can just pay up, potentially get a Penske car who does have that lap leading upside. 7K range. This is kind of where you start to get into the range of if you are playing 3 dominators, you're going to be able to get to this 7K range. I think Matty D is a really good play. He is a Penske affiliated, driver with the Wood brothers. He runs well at these flat, short tracks. He has some place differential baked in. It's pretty much his last real chance to probably get a win. At least at the Cup level. I have no idea what his plans are next year, but all the good rides for the most part are taken up. Most likely a Final Four drivers get a win next week at Phoenix. So this is kind of it for him in my mind. But I like him as a DFS play. Stenhouse and Newman, I think, are relatively safe plays just because they start further back. And if you are grabbing a lot of the guys who are starting in the top, top 8, top 9, top 10, you need some place differential points too. It's not like you should completely abandon place differential. And Stenhouse and Newman are some guys who do offer that to you. One guy who I'm really high on is Eric Jones. He starts deep in the field. He's cheap. He's easy to afford. And Martinsville is a track. I've been saying it in the Xfinity video and the truck video as well. Like the driver plays a significant, they play a larger role in the potential of the finish, the potential of the speed of the car, like where the car is running at Martinsville than like a 1.5 mile track where it's like you're full throttle all the way around. If your car isn't set up good, or if you don't have the same motor that, the Hendrick, the Penske and the JGR cars have, like you're screwed. This is a place where I think Eric Jones' skill alone can wheel him to, a top 20, a top 18, potentially even higher than that if things get crazy at the end and he can avoid the wrecks. Probably still going to go maybe a lap or 2 down, just depending on how long these green flag runs are. But again, he starts deep enough that I think he can move forward and advance his position. Briscoe's another one. I'm kind of on the fence with Briscoe. He historically hasn't run great at Martinsville, but he's been significantly better in the 750 horsepower package than he has in the 550 package. And I talked about this a lot in the Xfinity video, but there's a lot of overlap between the road courses and Martinsville. They're technical tracks. Well, who's a guy who runs really well on road courses? Chase Briscoe, who has been a guy who showed up this year in Cup races at the road courses. Chase Briscoe. So he's a guy who I think might come in lower owned. who I think gives you some good value of the 6K range. I like his finishing potential a lot more than a lot of the other drivers priced there, who I think might get a significant amount of ownership. And I know I'm high interest on them, and I would still have a lot of ownership to these guys, but Ryan Preece and Corey LaJoie, I think they're going to be extremely popular this weekend. LaJoie had like a top 15 car in the spring race before he ran into issues, and he runs so much better in the 750 horsepower package. The Spire team they are all in on the 750 horsepower package, so they're trying to make the most of it. Preece is a open, he's a modified driver. He comes from these short flat tracks. Like, this is his background. He has a lot of laps at this track. Even though he's in, a JT Doherty car, like, again, the equipment isn't as important this weekend. He starts relatively deeper in the field. He is automatically a top 26 car just by starting, the race, and he should be able to move forward throughout the weekend. Buescher is a guy I think I'm going to be underweight on. I know he's going to be popular, but he should be more expensive than this. I mean, he's probably more of a GPP play. His finishing potential is definitely there. I just think he's going to get a lot of ownership. And if he doesn't finish well, or like, I don't see him finishing much higher than 15th. Like, I think that's his kind of his ceiling. And he could very well get caught up in an accident, or, loose wheel, or, whatever it is. And then he's going to go backwards and hurt potentially a lot of DFS lines that are out there. Not getting the McDowell. I think Haley and Alfredo are okay. Maybe they'll finish 28th to 30th, but do you see Haley finishing top 25? I don't. Do you see Alfredo finishing top 25? Like, I don't, unless things get really crazy and they can somehow avoid all of it. But when have they done that this year? It's been very rare. And then it just comes down to the man, the myth, the legend, Quinn Huff. There's been a couple of times this year where Huff, or whoever it is, looks like, is it a Huff week? Like, is this the week that you punt? Is he going to score you a lot of points? No. Why would we play him? Well, if you play him, look at all the salary it saves you, and you can then get another potential lap leader. So maybe from going from 2 dominators, you're now able to go to 3 dominators. Or maybe if you go to 3, you're now able to go to 4, only increasing your chances of getting that guy who's going to be out front and leading laps. And with 500 laps, it's a long race. There should be a lot of guys who do get that chance to get out front. And you're going to want those guys in your lines, especially if you're looking at DraftKings throughout the race. Like, those laps click off so fast, points are awarded so quickly. And if you don't have those drivers, you're screwed. So, are you really missing out by paying up for a Justin Haley or Anthony Alfredo points wise, where you can, save $1,000 and drop down and get Huff? Like, I don't know. That's something you have to consider. And usually people don't like playing the punt plays. I think Huff will probably be somewhat popular just because he does start so deep in the field and he is so cheap. And it allows you to get those studs in your lineup. But that's kind of what I would do if I were you. Like I said, start at the top, get 3 or 4 guys who you're the most confident in. For me, it's, it's Hamlin, it's Truex, it's Larson, it's Elliott, and then the Penske cars. Like, of those 7 drivers that I just said, get 3, get 4 of them, and then build around there. And like I said, if you want to get different, go to Christopher Bell. Maybe try to get Matty D, Eric Jones, Stenhouse, Newman, Chase Briscoe. Like, if you want to get a little bit different, maybe try to get some of those guys. But if you do that, you're most likely sacrificing a potential lap leader. So a lot of different ways you can go, but that's what makes it fun. That's why NASCAR DFS is entertaining. So yeah, that'll do it. If you guys want access to it, it's on Twitter at FastCarsFM. And the other videos are up. Any other questions or comments, drop them in the comment or the comment section below. And we'll catch you next week for Phoenix for the finale. Can't believe it's almost time to wrap it up this year. But again, thank you guys for all the support again, and good luck this weekend.